We'll bring up someone from the beloved History Colorado Center in Denver. She'll tell you all about herself. She has a great bio to share with you. Cassidy Nemick.
Hello, good evening. I'm Cassidy. I work for History Colorado. I mostly work in the archives and the artifacts. And I have been spending the last 3 years going through a massive collection of over 250,000 photographs of the American West, mostly Colorado, collected by Fred Missoula. So I would say about 98% of these images are from that collection. I was asked to explain why I'm interested in this sort of thing, why I know about this sort of thing. I don't have a great answer. I'm sure my dad wants to know why too. But I've always loved unruly women, and I don't think I ever will stop. And the more you learn about them, the better they get.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll get started. Who were these women? There's dozens of names that they were called throughout time. Some of the more common ones here in the West include soiled doves, fallen women, scarlet women, sporting women. Often they were arrested for the crime of sport. Ladies of the line and daughters of sin. Many, many other names, but these were some of them. These are two pictures. This is Jessie and Della. One of these pictures was taken in Leadville, the other in Salida. But they were both good friends of Madam Laura Evans, Colorado's longest working madam. I will touch on her later. Her part is the shortest, I'm sorry, because otherwise I'd talk about her all night. So it was intentional. The world's oldest profession was no stranger to the state of Colorado. The expansion of the American West was rife with opportunity for eager miners, railroad magnates, industrialists, and criminals alike. The harsh reality was that the majority of the opportunities were almost exclusively for men, while women were restricted to very few choices. Near the turn of the century, women had few choices and even less personal agency. As a woman, your few options in life were to marry, be a teacher, shop girl, or work domestically as a maid, cook, or laundress. These were your only options. You couldn't be a doctor, you couldn't go to school. I was hoping that would fit it. That's okay. The wages for these women were exceedingly poor. Working as a laundress, you could hope to make $1 a week. Working in a shop, maybe as a hat girl or a seamstress, you could hope to make maybe $6 a week. In comparison to the women who worked as sex workers, they could make on average $30 a week. If employed in a higher end brothel, they could make as much as $100 a night. For many women, the choice was an easy one. One of my favorite quotes that really explains this to me, and this is how I like to think of sex work and get away from the stigma of it, is by Ruth Rosen. She stated that they viewed the trade as an easier and more lucrative means of survival than the other kinds of jobs open to them. All too often, a woman had to choose an array of dehumanizing alternatives: to sell her body in a loveless marriage contracted solely for economic protection, to sell her body for starvation wages as an unskilled worker, or to sell her body as a sporting woman. The life of a sex worker could be brutal. Violence, sexual assault, suicide, drug and alcohol addiction, loneliness, and financial insecurity were common realities. Many women chose to pursue this form of work in hopes of a better life, an ounce of personal agency, and financial independence. Other women were forced into this work, either by life circumstances, abandonment by their husband, desperation for food and shelter, drug addiction, or even sex trafficking. All too often, these women met violent and lonely deaths, either from jealous lovers, violent patrons, or an overdose of laudanum, which was an opium mixture. These women were often seen as easy targets for the violent and the evil. In November of 1894, Denver faced its own Jack the Ripper. He was known as the Denver Strangler. Just like Jack the Ripper, he primarily targeted sex workers. By November 13th, so only 13 days, he had strangled 3 women from the red light district. Unfortunately, cases like this were not outliers and were more common than you would think. So tonight I'm going to spend some time highlighting some of the better known women of Colorado's red light district. We're going to start in the busiest, rowdiest, and most prominent district, Denver. So there are multiple names for Denver's red light district. It was originally named McGaw Street. The man it was named after didn't like that it was named after him because it was the red light district. So it was named Holiday Street. Same thing, so they finally named it Market Street. Denver's red light district was a hotspot of saloons, opium dens, gambling houses, and parlor houses of varying respectability. Located downtown just one street over from Larimer, Market Street was an enticing den of entertainment and sin, where anyone could find a welcome distraction from the difficult life of early Colorado. The red light district along Market Street was primarily located between 18th and 23rd and contained an estimated 500 to 1,000 working women. These women lived and worked in varied conditions, ranging from alleyways to the opium dens of Pop Alley to the infamous House of Mirrors. Single-woman cribs were commonplace along Market Street, where women would lean out of windows to entice men into their rooms. Here are 2 images of Market Street. This one here, you can see some young women over here leaning out the door, looking for customers. Here is an image of some of the cribs. They were later closed down and bricked up, but this man is looking at the bricked up cribs. So those were where single women would work for themselves. This is a Sanborn map image. They're free to use. They're really incredible. You can access them through most libraries. This is an image of the plots of Market Street and 20th in 1903. I went ahead and marked every parlor house and or sex worker location with a red dot. All up there and all along the side. And then a couple of the blue dots, those are saloons. So you could easily go out, have quite the night without leaving the block. Typically, while looking through Sanborn maps or older maps, they won't be marked as brothels or parlor houses. They're marked as FB or female boarding. This is how you know is the nice way of saying it. And even on US Census lists, you'll see them marked as female boarders. Here's another picture of Market Street on 21st. So we just moved 1 block over. Once again, all the reds are sex workers. All right, so we're going to talk about the House of Mirrors a little bit. This is still there in Denver. You can walk outside. There's a historic plaque. I don't believe you can go inside at the moment, which breaks my heart because I really want to go in there. But this is located at 1942 Market Street, and it featured the finest furniture, textiles, and a parlor room covered in mirrors from floor to ceiling. It also included, which unfortunately is lost, a door frame in the entryway that was intricately carved with erotic images. I wish it was still there. I just want to know what happened. The exterior of the building features 4 carved stone faces. The one at the top, so at the very top corner, you can barely see it there, but if you Google it, it's all over the internet. Is believed to be Madame Jenny Rogers, which is pictured there in the beautiful fur collar and hat. So that's the one at the top, and then the 3 below are rumored. Every historian has a different idea on this. But they are rumored to be 3 men that she blackmailed to afford the construction of the house. So there's no proof, but that's my favorite rendition of that. Jenny was very popular, just like me. She was about 6 foot tall, very thin, and very tall. So she was very striking at the time because there really weren't many 6 feet tall people. And she was the queen of the red light district in Denver. She quickly climbed the ranks after she arrived in Denver in 1879. She bought her first parlor house at 2009 Market Street. Throughout her time in Denver, she would purchase, sell, and lease all of her properties to other madams. The most prominent being, of course, this House of Mirrors. When she died in 1909, she was one of the few madams to have a large estate left behind. Her estate in 1909 was valued at $82,000 and had 36 claims against it. I went ahead and pulled up a calculator, and in today's money, that's $2,842,000, give or take. Next, Maggie Silks. She was the Denver queen of the red light district after Jenny Rogers. So after Jenny Rogers had passed away, Maddie purchased the House of Silks from her estate. Historians have pored over the life of Maddie Silks for years. She often appears in books, documentaries, and research. She started her trade at the age of 19, and she opened her first parlor house in Georgetown in 1876. Soon after, she moved her operations to Denver. She was one of the top madams in the entire city, with Jenny Rogers being the second. Maddie was known as a well-upholstered and accomplished hellraiser. She ran a respectable house, respectable, and often stayed out of trouble with the law when antagonized. In 1877, she was arrested and fined for public drunkenness. And later that year in August, she was involved in an altercation with another madam. The story has been very, very sensationalized over the years, with retellings coming from authors and historians alike. The popular story is that Maddie Silks engaged in a topless duel with her rival madam, Kate Fulton. This duel, of course, was over Maddie Silks' personal lover, Court Thompson. The reality is much less enticing. The reality is that during the celebration, the two madams got into an argument, which resulted in Court, Maddie Silks' boyfriend, breaking Katie's nose. Because of that, shots were fired. Nobody was killed, and both women kept their blouses on. Sorry. After the closure of the Denver Red Light District in 1915, this was the official closure. Prostitution in Denver went through World War II easily. This was the official closure of the Red Light District. Maddie was forced to sell her infamous House of Mirrors around 1919. It was purchased later, ironically, by the Denver Buddhist Church in 1929. Maddie would eventually pass away at the Denver General Hospital in 1929 at the age of 81. So here we have really the only confirmed image of Maddie Silks with this beautiful parasol. And of course she had enough money. The original isn't there anymore, unfortunately. But she had enough money to put her own name as you would cross the threshold into her parlor house. She knew what she was doing. Oh, we went too far. These are some images of, the only images we really have of the interior of the House of Mirrors. These were taken in about 1935, so after the Buddhist church had taken over. So some things were removed. Obviously we don't have this door frame that I want so bad, but we have this, you can see the entryway and the stairs that go up. We have this cute little Japanese kid right here, sitting on the stairs with her name below. And then over here is really the only existent image of the parlor room, which was covered in mirrors, giving it that name. You'll find in antique shops a lot of people claim their mirrors are from this. I doubt it. All right, so we're going to move on to Cripple Creek. Honestly, my favorite city. It is, as you probably know, the largest gold boom town in Colorado. A city full of miners, prospectors, and lonely young men. Trying to strike it rich was a hotbed of activity for sex workers. They saw a market, and they quickly moved in. Lonely working men were desperate for companionship, and sex workers moved to mining towns with the intention of making their own fortune. So this is another one of those sandboard maps of Myers Avenue, which was the red light district. And it's hard to see, but instead of individually labeling each one, they just wrote female boarding over the entire block. The bottom corner here, this was known as Poverty Gulch. It still is today, but that's near 4th Street at the East End. That was really where the lower end, the cheaper working women were. Unfortunately, there was a big fire in 1896, 2 of them. But we'll get to that. So like in Denver, Myers Avenue was parallel to the busy street. You'll find this in almost all Colorado cities. There's a main street, the sex workers set up shop, 1 street over. Perfect location. So this district also included saloons, dance halls, parlor houses, cribs, etc., etc. And at the end on that corner there were poverty gulches, is where the shacks and the flimsy structures were located. This is where miners came in. They didn't have the money for houses. They set up whatever they could and got to work. In 1896, there were 2 back-to-back fires that completely devastated Cripple Creek. The majority of the structures in the city were made of dry wood, and it was a tinder box waiting for disaster. The first fire was ignited on April 25th, 1896, in the Central Dance Hall along Myers Avenue. Dance Hall is a nice way of saying seedy saloon. The cause is believed by many to have been a fight between a working girl and a patron, which resulted in a gas stove being kicked over. 4 hours later, after the fire was finally extinguished, it had consumed more than 300 buildings. A second fire was started just 4 days later at the Portland Hotel by a grease fire in the kitchen. This fire proved to be way worse than the last and quickly consumed furniture stores, a lumber yard, the Harder grocery store, which contained 700 pounds of dynamite, and over 1,000 personal homes. It didn't help that during this time, the fire department, one of their main methods of stopping fires was to blow up your house. Can't burn what isn't there. Over 40 blocks of businesses were destroyed. More than 1,000 homes were leveled. Myers Avenue and the entertainment district were leveled, leaving many homeless and unemployed. Having learned a very hard lesson about wooden structures, the city was soon rebuilt with brick. Some residents were glad to see Myers Avenue burnt clean. Unfortunately for them, it quickly bounced back to life with the world's oldest profession once again. So these are 2 images of the fires. The one on top is during, I believe, the second fire, and below is the aftermath with the only brick building left standing. Everything else is ash. So here's another image. This is Myers Avenue after the fire, so we'll go back. This is it before, the entire block, funeral boarding, all of it. After the fire, pretty much the same thing. So these women over here, this women over there, and then there's some saloons on the other streets. They quickly rebuilt. So one of the most famous madams from Cripple Creek is Pearl DeVere. She was the most envied madam, and her original brothel burned in the fires. Eventually she opened a 2-story parlor house called the Old Homestead. Today it is the Homestead Museum, and I love it dearly. This is an image of it from the 50s, but it is still there today, and you can visit it. The Homestead was known in Cripple Creek for being the most prestigious parlor house in the district. It was decorated inside with crystal chandeliers, wallpaper imported from Paris, expensive rugs, and other decor. Only the extremely wealthy could afford to visit the Homestead, with the night starting at $250. Remember when I said the high-end girls could maybe make $100 a night? This is where they would make that money. Today, the city of Cripple Creek holds an annual Pearl DeVere celebration. They have bed races down the street. I love it.
What are they doing on the beds?
Oh, there's usually 2 people on the beds and 1 person pushing them down the street. Yeah. Unfortunately, after an extravagant party in 1897, Pearl excused herself to her room, where she took some morphine to help her sleep. This was a normal thing. A lot of these women would take a little bit of morphine, and everyday people would take morphine to help them sleep. It was their melatonin of the time. Unfortunately, she died that night of an accidental overdose. Her funeral was paid for by an undisclosed wealthy patron, and a funeral parade was later held in her honor, with the Elks Band leading the procession to the graveyard. So there we have a picture of her headstone. That's not her original headstone. Her original headstone was wooden, and the people of Cripple Creek came together to give her a new one, shaped like a heart. I love it. Some other notable names from Cripple Creek include Scarface Liz, Leo the Lion, and Liver Lip Liz. These are only some, I had to choose the best group. Both Scarface Liz and Liver Lip Liz were previously named by patrons, earning them their distinguishing names. Scarface Liz was the victim of an acid attack in Leadville. The scarring of her face forced her to leave Leadville and work in a crib in Poverty Gulch. She was once a previously higher-end woman, and this attack forced her to go down the ranks. Liver Lip Liz had a similar story of violence in Leadville, which forced her to leave for Cripple Creek. After she was assaulted again in Cripple Creek, she decided to leave the life behind and become a bootlegger. She was very successful. Now, Leo the Lion was known for her disorderly conduct, which included drunken rampages in Poverty Gulch while stark naked. In a fit of jealousy, she would eventually run off Lillian Powers, who we'll talk about soon. Salida and Laura. Oh, Laura, I love Laura so much. So Laura is Colorado's longest working madam. She put up her brothel in Salida. She began working as a sex worker in Denver in the 1890s after intentionally leaving her husband. But she ended up moving to Leadville after she left her husband for a second time to work what she called her internship. In Leadville, she became a legendary hellion, where she shoved lovers through glass windows, rode her horse into the Leadville Ice Palace, raced chariots through the streets, and smuggled money into striking minds. In the late 1890s, she ended up relocating to Salida, where she would eventually save up enough money to purchase her own parlor house. Salida's red light district was once again located one street away from the main street, along Front Street, which today I believe is 2nd Avenue. And it was right next to the railroad tracks, so easy access. She would run the large boarding house as 127 West Front Street, as well as rent out the single woman cribs along the street on the other side. So this, another image here, a much smaller red light district than the other ones. The triangle, that's Laura's house. That's where she ran her parlor. There were a couple other red light district ones. The one, I wish I brought my cat laser as a pointer. This one had a drive-through. I was too busy being funny. Okay. Laura would continue to run her parlor house in Salida until 1949, when the city of Salida officially shut her down. They would eventually come back a year later and ask her to reopen. She said no. You chose. This is your choice. For the remainder of her life in Salida, she would rent rooms from her house to railroad men and travelers. She was known for staying up late, playing cards, and recounting her stories to anyone who would listen. So this is an image here of Laura taken in Salida after she moved when she was younger. And then up there is a picture of her rolling her own cigarettes. She refused to buy pre-rolled ones. So these are some images of Laura's properties. Here on this side, this is Laura's main parlor house. It looks a little bit different now, I believe the Shriners Club now. But it's still there, you can go look. And then directly across the street were these one-woman cribs. Those are unfortunately not there anymore. But she would rent those out to other women as well. And then one of my favorite pictures, one of them for so many. This is Laura and two of her women in the 1940s celebrating the end of World War II. Better thing out there first. All right, so I mentioned Lillian Powers earlier. We're going to talk about her a little bit. She was known as the Laundry Queen. She worked in various cities, including Denver, Victor, Cripple Creek, and Salida. And she would eventually open her own parlor house in Florence, which is still there. I called the owner a couple weeks ago to make sure she knew what it was. Lil was born in Wisconsin, and early in her life she worked as a laundress, which is where she got the nickname, the Laundry Queen. After entering into prostitution of her own free will, which is important, she moved to Colorado. That's what it was. After entering prostitution, she decided to move to Colorado because she heard of the immense success of Cripple Creek, a classic story. While she was in Cripple Creek, she rented a crib from Leo the Lion, the woman that would nakedly rampage through the streets. She quickly was very successful, and she drew the ire of Leo, who was unable to keep any clientele due to her behavior. Overcome with jealousy, Leo kicked her out of the rented crib and forced Lillian to go somewhere else. She ended up finding herself renting a crib from Laura in Salida, where she remained for 8 years. Laura and Lil soon became great friends and often financed each other's ventures. The two kept in touch for the remainder of their lives. At one point, Lillian gave Laura a chihuahua as a gift. She just mailed him to her. I wrote a whole article on this. And Laura named the chihuahua Pimp Powers. Her personal albums are full of pictures of her and this dog, and it's really beautiful. After saving up enough money, Lillian decided to move to Florence, where she opened up her own parlor house that she called Lil's Place. Lil's Place was open from 1920 to 1950, so a little bit after Laura, but Laura started before Lil, so that's why she gets the title. When Fremont County would eventually close the establishment. Lil once boasted, "I was never legally married, never pregnant, never burned, and I have no regrets." So here's a picture of what Lil's Place looked like. Lillian and Fred Mizzou's wife were standing there talking at the porch. An older portrait of Lillian and a younger one. All right, so we're gonna move to Trinidad. There's not a lot written about Trinidad. I hope to do some more research on it. May Phelps is the most well-known madam of the area. She was only one of a handful, though, that worked in the city of Trinidad. Her and other madams, such as Lillian Smith, Margarita Carrillo, and Sarah Cunningham, worked together to form the Madams Association of Trinidad. This was a madams union. This Madams Union worked together to create the Madams Rest Home and construct a trolley bridge. The rest home was used as a safe resort for women that worked in the trade to have a much-needed getaway from the hustle of the city. The trolley bridge was an idea created by the Madams Association to construct a bridge which connected the two existing trolley lines in Trinidad. So in Trinidad, there were two trolley lines, and they both kind of went around the city on both sides, but they didn't connect in the middle. So the Madams funded construction and a bridge to make them connect in the middle. Of course, this was for their benefit. The trolley line, the connection, would run right across Santa Fe Street, where the red light district was. From 1910 to 1922, the Madams had a trolley running directly to their doorsteps. So another standard for you, the triangle is May Phelps, parlor house. All of these other red ones are other parlor houses along Santa Fe. Just as rowdy as the other red light districts in Colorado, a rumored advertisement tactic by the Trinidad parlor houses were to call the fire department on a false alarm. The, I'm sure, more than willing firemen would help rescue these women from the second floor of the parlor houses. Of course, the women were instructed to forget their underwear. Yep. May, photographed here by Altman, I can't remember his first name. He's a very prominent Trinidad photographer. We have a couple formal portraits of her like this in his studio. She was a character in her own right. And she was once being questioned in a court appearance by a local attorney named Jane McCoe. He asked her whether or not she ran a parlor house along Santa Fe. She's quoted as responding, "You want to know, you've been there often enough." Basically, every city, except for the one those pop up, every city in Colorado had a red light district. Steamboat probably had one. Just about every single city where there were lonely men, there were sex workers. There's no way I could cover all of them tonight, unless you want to be here for hours and hours and hours. This is an image of the shuttered parlor houses on West and 2nd Street in Leadville in the 1950s. We have Earl Pomeroy here of the time acting like he's knocking on one of the doors to be let in. And then this here is a internal image of one of the parlor house and the workers in Leadville about 1890. On the bottom is white and the black. That's Laura Evans from earlier. And special mention, the dog on top of the piano next to the alcohol bottle. I think he is an Adam. These women have been sensationalized by the passing of time, and they are for good reason. Their lives were often equal to that of Western folklore. They lived outside of the lines of society, and they lived large. But beneath the madams, beneath the red stockings, the morphine, the gambling and sin, they were women. Women with their own hopes and dreams, personalities and wants. They lived as intricate lives as our own. And I'm going to close this presentation with one of my favorite pictures of these women that I feel are really humanizing of them. That I found during my work in Digitize. They have them drinking alcohol, of course, doing cartwheels in front of Laura Evans' parlor house, playing with dogs, and just being adorable. Thank you guys so much. If you have questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
You didn't mention the bar across from the Brown House.
I did not. It's a